Arshtat and Farid are dead. Or at least this is what George tells us before quickly helping us escape with Leon, Sayalides, and Zagai. As we make our escape, we see the Sun Rune return to the sealed room, all but confirming the fate of our mother. We sail off, wondering about those we left behind.
Princess, please hurry! I'm trying, but where are my mother and father? Galleon, weren't you with them?
Princess!
What's the matter? Zahak, Alania, what are you two doing here? Princess, stay back! What's going on?
Hello, Princess. And where might you be going?
What? Oh no!
Damn.
What? Tell me what's going on here!
You're the ruler of Sun Palace now, Princess. We can't just let you leave now, can we?
Why are you...
We skip ahead to our group hiding out at the East Palace. We've changed our clothes to avoid detection, but we know we can't stay here long. A loyal official we sent out on reconnaissance informs us that word of the Queen's death has reached the East Palace, and that her assassination is being pinned on George. We decide the best place for us to flee right now is probably to Lunas and Hazwar. Isato rushes to greet us as soon as we enter Lunas. He says that they've received vague rumors of an attack on the Sun Palace, but don't know any details. Hazwar has been worried sick, so we quickly run to meet her. Hazwar is relieved to see us, but is worried about the news we might bring. The party tells her what happened to the best of their knowledge. She tries to stay optimistic, but it's obvious the news has affected her deeply. Zagai, via edgy metaphor, suggests that the best thing for us to do now is rest. We agree and head to bed. In private, Isato tells Hazwar that we won't be safe here for much longer, as the Godwins will surely suspect we would flee to Lunas. She agrees, but wants to give us at least a night to recover. Leon tries to comfort us, but we insist that she should get some rest as well.
Oh, yes, sir. I'll be on my way.
Marshal, your lordship, sir!
Father, you're early.
I was feeling a little anxious.
There's no need to worry. As you can see, we have complete control of the Sun Palace.
I heard there were a few crucial problems.
Crucial is such a strong word. There may have been a few unforeseen obstacles, but it all turned out fine. The only thing worth noting is that the Prince and Lady Sayalides managed to slip away. But thanks to that, we were able to make George take the blame, so, in the end, it wasn't a complete loss.
I see.
The Godwin bastards enter the sealed room, where the Sun Rune now resides. They comment on how neither one can wield the rune and urge the researchers there to continue their work, presumably to find a solution to that problem. They then talk about the princess and how obstinate she is being. We learn Miyake's is still alive with her as well.
Princess, won't you please rest even just for a little while? No! If I saw Mother and Father in my dreams, I think think I would cry. Oh, Princess. It's all right to cry, you know. I won't cry. I won't give them the satisfaction. If I cry, they win. If I cry, it's like admitting the defeat of our family, defeat to the likes of them. And that's why I can't cry. Oh, Princess. Princess. Please save me. Please save me.
We return to Lunas, where we learn, despite her best efforts to conceal it, Leone didn't sleep at all last night. Cyleeds joins us, and the party wonders how George is doing after being accused of killing the Queen and Farid. Cyleeds thinks that what she said to him in the Sun Palace is probably affecting him more than the accusations. Suddenly, Isato, George, and Zagai enter with urgent news. A large force of Godwin's soldiers were spotted heading towards Lunas. Cyleeds says there's no way they could have found them this soon, which prompts Isato to mention that several clerics went missing the night we arrived, likely to inform them of our whereabouts. Remember that many of the people here are none too fond of our family and think Hazwar should be the rightful queen. Hazwar asks Isato to show us a way out through the forest. The elf is initially hesitant, as the trail we would be taking is a sacred path known only to elves. Ever loyal to Hazwar, however, Isato agrees to ferry us away. The path should take us into Barrow's territory, and if there's anyone who'd be willing to harbor us from the Godwins, it would be the Barrows. Before we leave, we talk to a cleric that gives us some medicine. We head down the path where we caught Log and Lun before Isato stops us at a dead end.
This way.
That way? But that's a dead end.
Just follow me. Quickly.
What's going on? Remember what the Oracle said. It's a path only the elves know about. Come on now, let us hurry.
The mystical elf trip takes us to a path with a bunch of ladders. We can run into encounters here, but with all the heavy hitters we have right now, they're nothing to us. When we reach the end, Isato tells us that we should head south until we reach Hod Village. Past that, we should reach Rainwall, the hometown of Lord Barrows. We ask Isato to come with us, but unfortunately it's not meant to be at the moment. The trip to Hod is a short one if we know where we're going. Along the way, we run into a mini-boss, a boar named Peckles. With George and Zagai on our team, he's a cakewalk. We get a leather cape, which is a nice upgrade to our normal cape. So this is Hod, and this is Hod's quote-unquote music. It actually fits the town pretty well, as Hod is kind of a postmodern art haven, which is why there are so many outlandish decorations around. Still, not the most relaxing BGM I've come across in a video game. Cyleeds thinks it'd be wise to ask around Hod to make sure Lord Barrows would be on our side, so we set off to explore. The people of Hod aren't that friendly, as art is everything here and everybody is an artist. A genius artist! We head south to this big hourglass ladder thingy and find a chest with a boost piece in it. Below that, we talk to a She thinks we dress like hobos and tells us to go away. But we do find a drain piece near her. Going north near the inn, we find a chest containing a power piece, and inside the inn we find a Wind of Sleep scroll. Down at a dock, we find a chest containing a window set, which tells us we need to find a window maker. These are actually different visuals for the UI and text boxes and not actual windows. Near the item and armor shops, we find the cross tactic, an attack boosting tactic useful for when you have a lot of medium ranged characters. Near these sad looking Gumby things, we find a chest containing 1,000 potch and the last of our patience for this music. As we attempt to escape, however, we're stopped by a soldier who yells out our position.
Hey, it's the prince! It's them! It's the Prince and Lady Cyleads! I'm sure of it!
Uh-oh. Prince, let's run!
Hey, wait! What you running for? My name is Boz Wild, the Lord of the port town of Estrise. I'm a friend of Lord Barrows. I know it sounds presumptuous of me, but I'm here to rescue all of you.
Boz and his mohawk tell us that the Barrows have people looking out all over for us after news of the coup reached them. He says Lord Barrows doesn't believe what the Godwins say and would be more than happy to harbor us. He tells us that if we wish to go to Rainwall with him, we're to meet him at the port. It's here where the guide takes his leave of us. He feels that though it wasn't his fault, the Barrows and their citizens would think he disgraced him by failing to compete in the sacred games. He says his farewells after telling us he enjoyed fighting alongside us. We meet Boz at the pier and make way for Rainwall. Rainwall is a large city with 3 tiers that we reach via a large set of stairs that run through the middle of the city. The people here shower us with praise and condolences for our family. As soon as we enter, we find a chest containing some potch. On the east side of the first tier, we find some it's mega menace! Going up to the second tier, we ransack an old man's house for his silk cape and take it as our own. Close by, we head to the inn and go upstairs. There we find a prosperity ring, a very useful ring that, though it lacks defensive properties, increases all the pot we receive from random encounters. We put it on us because we're a prince and we must be fancy. On the eastern side we find, oh no, oh god, we find a magic absorbed piece and nothing else. Heading up to the third tier, we see an old Dr. Wily looking man talking to the trading post vendor. He's aggressively asking the vendor if the post has or has had a specific tome. He's searching for the Tome of Arcanos, a supposedly much sought after tome that is extremely dangerous. The vendor hasn't seen it. On his way out, the man introduces himself as Alhazred and tells us to keep an eye out for tomes. We go east to a large mansion and head upstairs to find 2 chests. The first contains another Wind of Sleep scroll, and the second, the Crescent tactic. This is a defensive tactic that keeps most of your characters near the front. Finally, we head towards the Barrows mansion, outside of which we are immediately stopped by Euro. He hurries us inside to speak with his father. Salem, in his oh-so-overly grandiose way, assures us that the Barrows don't believe a word that the Godwins say and believe us wholeheartedly about the revolt. Then, we meet another member of the Barrows family.
Lucerina.
This is Lucerina, and she actually seems normal? Weird. Cyleads remarks on how much she's grown since they last saw each other. Lucerina offers to show us our room after our long journey. On our way upstairs, Lucerina introduces us to a large man named Chuck. She says Chuck manages her family's storage rooms and he'd be glad to hold anything for us as well. He does indeed do this and acts something like a bank where we can store items we aren't using at the moment to clean our inventory space. Chuck assumes that we're here to marry Lucerina, which of course everyone is oblivious about. Like most times in this game where our character is supposed to be showing us around, we actually have to find our way to wherever we're supposed to go. We head to the wrong room, which Lucerina says belongs to her mother. Apparently, ever since the eldest Barrow's son died, she shut herself inside and refuses to see anyone. Eventually, we find the right room where Lucerina gives us her condolences.
And if you need anything, please feel free to come get me, okay? I'll leave you alone now.
I can't believe it. Is that girl really Lord Barrows' daughter?
Yeah, I know what you mean. But as unlikely as it may seem, they really are related.
How could someone as shady as Lord Barrows?
Well, shady or not, I'm pretty grateful for him right now. And thanks to Lord Barrows, at least we can finally get a little bit of rest, and we all need that right now.
I don't think we can relax quite yet.
Leon.
I understand that Nethergate is working for Lord Godwin. You never know where or when those guys are going to strike. We have to keep our guard up.
Leon, don't you think you're being just a little too paranoid?
No. I know what I'm talking about. I was once a member of Nethergate too.
You were what?
There's no way. You know, when Farad took you in back then, you were even younger than Limslia is now. How could you have possibly been a member of Nethergate?
Nethergate used to kidnap children who didn't have any family and train them to be assassins. My very first memories are those of my training to become a Nethergate assassin. I don't know who my real parents were, or even what my real name is.
That's awful.
Day in and day out, they taught us nothing but how to hurt people. In 2 more years, they would have made me a full-fledged assassin. I would have been a murderer by now. But before that could happen, Farad rescued me. And he's the one that gave me the name Leon, too. So that's why I do anything to repay Farad. Prince, I'm sorry I never told you. Do you think you can still trust me even though you know about my past? Prince! Thank you. Oh, thank you so much.
We switch to seeing an extravagant revolving bridge turning and several Godwin soldiers crossing it. The previous scene shows part of why I find Leon to be more than just the girl party member. Her devotion to us isn't one of love but of duty, and not to us but our father. Not only did Farad raise Leon, but saved her from a much worse life. The choice you make in that scene is probably the most important when it comes to Leon. We're awoken by Leon, who says Godwin troops have already found us and are mobilizing near Rainwall. We go downstairs to find everyone discussing this. Salim says he has more than enough forces to contend with the Godwins, but he really thinks that we should be the one to lead them. His reasoning is that the Godwin narrative is that we were kidnapped by George, so if we're seen leading troops against the Godwins, that would strike a large blow to it. Eventually, the party agrees that it's a good idea, and, well, I guess we're off to war. Here we get our first taste of army battles. Yep, there's another form of combat in this game. These play out like a real-time strategy game. A rather simplistic one, but one nonetheless. You start on the army organization screen, but we can't actually do anything on it for this battle, so I'll get into specifics on that later. The basics of army battles also sort of fall along the lines of rock, paper, scissors, though it's a bit more complicated than duels. In this battle, however, all you need to know is that infantry beat archers, archers beat cavalry, and cavalry beat infantry. When you move a unit into an enemy unit, the two will do battle, with both sides taking losses. Your goal is to make sure you lose less than the enemy. Whoever loses more forces retreats if they were not completely wiped out. Losses are determined by the types of units fighting, their level, which is represented by the yellow pips by their HP, and any abilities used by characters positioned in those units. It's basically impossible to lose this fight, as Boz's unit alone could probably solo it. He's not only overpowered for this fight, but leads a spear unit, a stronger form of infantry. This is mostly just a tutorial for the basics. We just move our overpowered units into the enemy until we kill them all. One thing to note, however, is that in army battles, characters can die, and if they aren't important for the main story, they dead. Like, gone. This isn't the case for normal battles, just army battles. Also, if you win an army battle without losing the entirety of a single unit, you get a victory plus at the end, which comes with a reward. In this case, we get the Hungry Wolf tactic.
Marvelous! Absolutely marvelous, Your Highness! What a triumphant return! A new god of war is born, the blood of His Majesty Parrot running in his veins! Attention, attention! Listen here, my dear citizens of Rainwall! Helena is about to be undermined by the evil ambitions of the ever so despicable Godwins! But with the divine guidance of the sun, His Royal Highness the Prince has come to stand before us! And in the name of our prince, let us join together and fight for the liberty of Helena! We must deal a crushing blow to Godwin, who murdered our queen and the commander of the Queen's Knights! And we must rescue the captured Princess Limslia! We shall restore our beloved homeland to all its former glory! Let our mercy as deep as the Fatus, and our authority as powerful as the sun, be revealed to the entire world!
Let our mercy as deep as the Fatus, and our authority as powerful as the sun, be revealed to the entire world! Let our mercy as deep as the Fatus, and our authority as powerful as the sun.
As you can probably tell by the music, our victory brings with it some trepidations, as we're not sure if we can trust Lord Barrows. Our perspective shifts briefly to the Sun Palace. We see that Lim is still not giving Gazelle any sign of weakness as she berates him for entering her room. Gazelle informs her of our stand at Rainwall, which gives her a swell of hope. The Godwin quickly uses it as a threat, however, declaring us traitors to the throne to be executed. We shift back to Leon informing us that reinforcements from a town called Sable have arrived and that we should meet with them. We head downstairs to do just that.
Oh, Your Royal Highness, you've arrived just in time! Indeed, we are in the presence of one dauntless General Dine. He is from Sable, a fine hamlet in the south.
Your Royal Highness, I am most honored to meet you. My name is Dine. I hail from Sable. I was ordered by Lord Rowlbell to assist you, sir. I came here with some of our troops as quickly as I could.
You're gonna be a big help around here. Sable's close to the border with Armis, so they've always been at each other's throats. But I've heard Armis has been shaking in their boots ever since Dine took command down there.
No, Lord Wilde, I'm afraid your compliments are undeserved. The reason Armis has been docile lately is because their Majesties Arshtat and Ferid were so skilled at diplomacy. To show our gratitude to them, we solemnly pledge our strength to help you, sir, in any way we can.
Oh, this is most helpful to our cause. What's more, volunteer soldiers have been pouring in from every region. My, the day we thwart the Godwin scheme is indeed nigh.
General Dine seems to be an honorable man, and though he pledges his support for us, he notes that they alone are nothing compared to the might the Godwins now have at their disposal. The group decides that the best thing to do now is look for more allies. Salim suggests our first target should be Ratfleet, which has moved close by. He wants us to go personally to further expose the Godwin's lies. Dine agrees, but also suggests we seek to bring Lord Lake to our side. A daunting task, to be sure, as our mother was the cause of the town's near destruction, but if we gained their support, we would surely win over the common people. Salim is hesitant to approve of seeking Lord Lake's support, likely because they would have much less tangible resources to contribute, but eventually agrees with the caveat that Ratfleet should be our first stop. Leeds, having the most experience with the man, still does not trust Salem and thus opts to stay back to keep an eye on him. George can't go with us since he's wanted for the Queen's assassination, which leaves us and Leone to head out on our own. And with that, after 6 episodes and around 16,000 words, the game finally starts. I'd like to thank anyone who's been willing to put up with me so far as I try to present this game in a hopefully digestible way. I typically want to end these episodes on a cutscene, but I feel like this is a good spot to start a new chapter of sorts. As you can probably tell, I'm still kind of learning how exactly I want to do this, but I do know that I want to do it. So let me know what you've liked and didn't like so far, and I'll love ya. Mwah. Before we go off on our journey, we see a couple of familiar faces have made their way to Rainwall. First, there's that woman in black who intruded on us at the East Palace. She tells us to fuck off, and we do. Okay. Down a tier, we see our buddy Don Knotts is here. He tells us he came to Rainwall when he heard about the battle, seeking to treat any of the injured. We asked him to join us, but he died in 2006, so he's busy right now. And so our journey begins. But first, let's learn about a video game. Probably the first thing that people learn about the Suikoden series is the number of characters you're able to recruit throughout the games. 5 is no exception to this, featuring 108 companions, around 70 of which can be used in traditional battles. In addition to some of the choices in the intro of the game, the number of characters we recruit directly affects the ending of the game. For this playthrough, we're getting all of them. Hopefully. Many characters require extremely specific, precise, and sometimes arbitrary requirements to be recruited. I've gotten them all before though, so we should be good. Most characters can be used in regular battles, but some are dubbed support characters. We can bring these characters into a party, but they don't fight, instead providing unique bonuses or conveniences while they're there. Similarly, most characters can be used in army battles, but some are specialized for this and some can only be used in army battles. For now, we'll focus on how characters function in regular battles. A character's strengths and weaknesses are largely defined by 3 factors: their statistics, their skills, and their equipment. We'll go over stats first. A character's attack stat determines how much damage they do with their basic physical attacks. A character's attack is a combination of their base attack stat and the attack granted by their weapon, which, if you'll recall, can be upgraded. The magic stat is a representation of a character's magical power and is added to any numerical values of a spell they cast. A character's defense stat actually refers exclusively to their physical defense, and is mostly a representation of their armor. Characters do differ slightly in base defense, but this stat is far more affected by what equipment a character is able to equip. Magic defense is defense against magic. This can also be affected by armor, but to a lesser extent. Magic defense varies much more between characters and goes hand in hand with their rune affinities, which we'll get into later. Technique affects a few things, namely a character's accuracy, chance to critical strike, and their chance to parry. Note, however, that not every character can parry, depending on their weapon. Accuracy is self-explanatory, determining how much a character can hit. Though this is based off the technique stat, there are several effects in equipment that only affect accuracy and not the other mechanics governed by technique. Evasion directly opposes accuracy, reducing a character's chance to be hit. Speed determines turn order. I don't know the exact calculations that go into it, but turn order is not set entirely by speed, with a factor of randomness. That said, it seems as if eventually, a character can get fast enough to always go first regardless of this. Finally, luck acts much in the same way as it does in many RPGs. Basically, every time there's a random factor in a calculation, such as critting or evading, luck adds a small bonus in your favor. Also, like in other RPGs, it's hard to exactly determine the advantages of luck, but it's good to have, I guess. We increase these stats by leveling a character up, but we can also affect them along with other factors with skills. After every successful encounter, the characters we use will acquire skill points, a separate progression system from experience points. In addition, we receive party skill points, which are skill points we can use on any character regardless of their personal point total. We use these skill points at skill trainers littered throughout the world. Characters can have 2 skills equipped at any one time, making it important that we figure out what we want a character to do. By training in a skill, we increase their ranks, thus increasing their effects. The catch here is that characters' max ranks differ. For instance, while a magic-oriented character might only be able to obtain a C rank in a physical skill, a physical fighter might be able to go all the way to the highest rank, SS. Every character has access to common skills. These consist of Stamina, which increases health points, Attack, which increases attack, Defense increases defense, Magic Defense increases magic defense, Technique increases technique, and Agility increases speed, but also their chance to hit multiple times in a single action. Vitality increases the damage a character does when they do a critical strike. Magic increases magical power, or how much damage or healing they do with magic. Finally, Incantation increases the speed with which a character can cast spells, important for healers. In addition to these skills, many characters have unique or just rarer skills that they can learn. For instance, Cyleeds can learn the long throw skill, which gives her ranged attacks a chance to hit multiple enemies. Finally, there are epic skills, which have to be found throughout the game as treasure. Generally, these are skills that combine 2 or more common skills, though to a slightly lesser effect than using a single common skill. Equipment in Suikoden V is mostly about what kind of armor a character can equip. As I've said before, weapons cannot be changed but can be upgraded. A character's weapon determines their optimal range, but also whether they can parry or counterattack, and their max number of hits. Whenever you perform an attack action, a character has a chance to hit more than once. Generally, quicker characters have a higher maximum number of bonus attacks. As for armor, pieces are generally separated into light, medium, or heavy variants. In these, however, many other specifications exist, and characters vary on what they can equip. For instance, a character might only be able to normally equip light armor, but may have an exception for chainmail armor pieces. Characters have a head slot, a body slot, an arm slot, and a foot slot, and they can actually have differing kinds of armor they're allowed to equip in each of those slots. So, needless to say, it can get pretty complicated in determining what kinds of armor a character can equip. Generally, however, heavier armor gives better defense while lowering a character's speed stat. Lighter armors obviously give less defense, but often provide other bonuses such as to magical power. Speaking of magical power, the final aspect of characters I'm going to cover here is the rune system. I've already mentioned that runes provide a character with several benefits should they be equipped, most notably the ability to cast magic. Characters have a potential of 3 rune slots they can acquire as they level up, but the level they receive them differs, and some do not receive some slots at all. In addition, some characters have a rune slot that is fixed, meaning that a character comes equipped with a rune and you cannot change it. These can sometimes be unique runes, but not always. For instance, Cyleeds' Wind Rune is not unique in any way, but is fixed to her nonetheless. Runes all fall into specific categories that you can see here. Note that some runes share the name of the category, but typically aren't the only rune to use that category. For instance, the Water Rune is in the Water category, but is the most basic of the runes in that category. Characters have rune affinities, which determine how well they can both use and defend against these categories. This is the primary means of determining which runes are best on which characters. A character with a C affinity in fire is going to suck at casting spells compared to someone with an A. And finally, characters have varying numbers of spell usages. Each rune that provides spells has 4 tiers with a different spell on each tier. This is important because characters differ on the number of times they can use these spells in a battle. Typically, this means spellcasting characters can use spells more often, with some of the other characters not even being able to use any higher tier spells. Whew! So, now that we know all that, we can get into the characters we're using now. First is, of course, the most important character, us. It's us, the protagonist. The prince is required to be in your battle party at all times, so it's a good thing he's pretty good. And no, the game isn't over if he dies, you just res him. Now, character stats go up every time you level, so I can't really give you exact stat distributions. Thankfully, however, Blaze Feeler has a guide on Game FAQs that has all the characters' stat totals at level 60, which gives us a good idea on their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, when I show a character stats, I'm going to go with a simple scale of low to average to high. If a stat is very low or very high, then the character's really bad or good in that stat. As for the prince, his stats are very evenly distributed while also having a high total. This makes him incredibly versatile, and he can be built into either a physical attacker or a mage with just a change in equipment and skills. He can only wear medium armor, however, and while his HP is good, it's not the highest out there. About the only job he can't do very well is a frontline tank, but he's very much a jack of all trades otherwise. His skills are amazing, having an A in every basic skill with an S in attack, technique, vitality, and magic defense. I find it best to equip him with attack and technique, but he works just as well with basically any combination. His weapon, the Tri-Nunchaku, is very good. Medium range, playing into his versatility, can parry and counterattack, and has a high combo count. Medium armor gives him decent protection while retaining his speed, but as the protagonist, he might get some special treatment in that area later on. His rune slots and affinities are a bit complicated to explain right now. At the moment, he only has one rune slot. We will get another one, but his right hand is fixed and I can't really tell you why yet. I'll just say for now, it's not a bad thing that it's fixed. His affinities make him fairly well balanced. I find he works with more support-oriented runes like water, but it's really personal preference here. We also have Leone, who is actually very similar to the prince. Basically everything I just said for the prince also applies to Leone, including the fact that she has a fixed rune slot that I can't really get into right now. Her weapon can parry but cannot counterattack though, making her even less of a good frontline option. She does make an excellent healer with an S rank in incantation however, and can still put out decent physical damage. Okay, are you ready for the game to continue yet? Good. Now our destination is Raftfleet, but we're actually going to go the opposite direction and return to Hod. Why? Well, I just wanted to hear that banger of a song some more, of course. But also we'll be recruiting our first character not given to us by the story. As soon as we enter, we go into this house with the blue gate, where we immediately get attacked by things. They're all named after the tonal scale. Well, they're easy, going down really quickly. After the battle, a short, portly man whose home we just invaded comes running, yelling at us for beating up what he calls members of his orchestra. He calls us a mediocrity and says his name is Cornelio. The things we beat up are apparently called Do-Re-Mi elves, and Cornelio here is training them to be part of his musical act. He forces us outside where we find one of the elves we so thoughtlessly scared away. What we have to do here is not touch the elf, at all, or we'll kill it. We make everyone but Cornelio defend, who uses a unique spell called Fugue to, for lack of a better term, tame the elf. In this case, Remi-Fa. Afterwards, Cornelio calls us mean names again and says he can't sense any of the other elves around. He says it's our job to find the rest of them now, and he intends to stick with us until we do. And with that, we, befriend Cornelio. Whenever we see this phrase, it means we've recruited a character. They're ours now. In this case, we actually get two, as the elves we recruit with Cornelio can be used in battle as well. As for Cornelio, he calls us mediocrities a lot, but he's actually pretty mediocre himself. He seems to be intended to be a mage, but his weapon is short range, which is not typically where you want your mages to be, and even in terms of his magic, he's fairly average. The true allure of the fabulous Cornelio is, of course, his musical talent. He's the only character able to use the Do-Re-Mi rune that's fixed to his head slot. Fun note, this is the only rune in the game associated with the sound affinity. Makes you wonder why they included it at all. At first, this rune just allows him to tame his Do-Re-Mi elves, but eventually he gets access to some actually useful abilities through it. The problem with this rune is, in order to use those actually useful abilities, you have to have Do-Re-Mi elves in your party. The more elves you have, the higher level spells Cornelio can use. The issue is that the Do-Re-Mi elves they're bad. They're just bad. I'm not even going to bother going through all their stats. They can't equip armor, they can't use runes, they can't even use skills. The only way to improve their statistics beyond leveling them up is by having Cornelio in the party equipped with his perfect pitch skill. They're all short range and generally just there as a gimmicky collection side quest. Still, I suppose it would be fun to see how much use you could get out of them and Cornelio, so I'm glad they're at least in the game. Until you get those elves, however, Cornelio is best used as a support mage.
It'll be thick as fuck!
Before we leave Hod, we stop by the appraisal shop where we see the appraiser looking at an artist's latest piece. He calls it extraordinary and gives the man 3,000 potch for it. After the artist leaves, however, the appraiser calls it awful before realizing we can hear him. He introduces himself as Baston and as a con artist. It seems he's more of an opportunist, however, as he laments he's basically had to sell out to Lord Barrow's eccentric taste to keep his business afloat. He thanks us for listening. As we move towards Rathfleet, we stop at this specific area on the world map to run around for no reason whatsoever. Eventually, we come across another Do-Re-Mi elf? Who would have thought? This is how we'll find the rest of the elves. They appear as random encounters in specific areas. In this case, we find Fa-So-La and recruit them. Fa-So-La is just as useless as Re-Mi-Fa. And finally, we follow the river until we find Rathfleet. Despite changing location, the layout of Rathfleet remains the same. Our first stop is to the inn, where we see a man enjoying his meal of fish. We talk to the chef standing by him and learn that the chef's name is Retso. Tarnation! The customer says he's getting full, which prompts a young girl to come out and chastise him. This is Retso's daughter, Shun Min. The customer, admonished for his non-fish eating ways, returns to his meal. We make our way to the Dahaka to meet with Raja and Kisara. They lead us to a back room where we can sit and talk about all that's happened. We learn that the people of Rathfleet already have a good idea of what's going on, and Raja guesses why we're here. She tells us the Godwins are already amassing soldiers, not just because they're soldiery people, but to oppose us and the Barrows. Raja then, unfortunately, denies Rathfleet's alliance with us, stating that they do not wish to be pawns to aristocracy. It isn't done with malice, however. She understands why we've had to join with the Barrows, and she gives us advice on what our next move should be, namely helping Lord Lake. If you haven't picked up on it yet, Lord Barrows, despite his family's more conservative attitude towards militarization, isn't all that trusted among the royal family and those adjacent to them. After our sit-down, we talk to Raja a bit, where she ponders why Salem seems to be more interested in us than Siledes, since she would be a much better candidate for rule in Felena's matriarchal society. We assume that it's strictly because of that he's using us as his face for his revolution, since not even the Barrows and Godwins want a repeat of the war for the throne 20 years past. As we leave the Dahaka, we're stopped by Kisara. She says that though Rathfleet cannot help us, she feels indebted since we essentially saved her family by bringing Log and Lund back here rather than sending them to Solfelena, where they may have been caught up in the Godwin coup. She tells us that we'll need a boat to get to Lord Lake easily, and since boats is what Rathfleet is all about, she offers Log and Lund's services in this matter. We spend some time upgrading Cornelio's weapon before heading to a pier where we find Log and Lund.
Oh, the prince!
Oh,
Look, we offer our sincere...
too bad the queen and Farid had to kick the bucket.
Hey!
Ah, that really hurt. What the hell did you do that for,
Shut up, Pop. How come you gotta be so insensitive? Can't you think about how the prince must feel?
I thought I was thinking about how he was feeling. I did say too bad, you know.
And that's why I told you to shut up.
Excuse me. Really, please you two stop.
Oh,
Sorry about that, Prince. So, I'm thinking you probably heard from the wife about this already.
If it weren't for you guys, Prince, me and Pop would have probably been in big trouble. So we want to get the chance to repay you. Sorry, I mean let us repay you, Your Highness.
Please. All right. Please, sir.
Prince?
Yes, you're a prince, Prince! In Rathfleet, we always repay our debts twice over, you know? We're gonna do our best.
All right, then. You gotta let us know if there be anything we can do to help you, okay? Well, I'm thinking there's some stuff we can't do, but if we can do it, we're gonna do it.
We tell the eager duo we need to head to Lord Lake.
Oh, you do, huh? Then we're gonna help you get there. Hop on board and watch your step. Lon, we're shoving off.
Aye, aye!
Is that the flow room?
Not bad, you think?
Hold on tight, you guys!
We arrive at a wharf north of Lord Lake. Log and Lund tell us to keep to the mountain range so we can steer clear of a Godwin fortress that's situated close to the town. Lund then informs us that she's coming along. Log tells her not to boon us, and we head once more to Lord Lake. The enemies we face on our trip are much like the ones we faced before, but a bit tougher since we don't have George babysitting us. Still, the hardest thing here is keeping our Do-Re-Mi elves alive so they can get some experience, but they make decent meat shields regardless. Note that even though Lund joined our party, we did not get the befriend text box, which means she's not a permanent companion, at least not yet. As such, to avoid spoilers, I won't be going over character stats and whatnot until we see that text box. We arrive at Lord Lake to find it's just as miserable as before. We talk to Talgel, the only person that seems to like us here, and tell him of our situation. He thanks us for our intentions, but says it's a fruitless endeavor. The people of Lord Lake have suffered too much at the hands of our family and could never follow us. He does point out, however, that, much like Rathfleet, that he can at least ensure that they would never join with the Godwins. The fortress we passed by that seemed to be damming the water was damming the water. Talgel tells us that the name of the fortress is Hatred Fortress, which, I mean, come on, Godwin, you gotta at least put up the appearance that you're not evil. Talking to our, friends in Lord Lake, we find not much has changed with them either. Ghosh at least tries to be sympathetic, but the doctor we talked to last time, she ain't even trying. Like, come on, lady, my parents just died, shit. Left with nothing to do here, we return to the wharf and tell Log to take us back to Rathfleet. We say goodbye to Log and Lund, with them again ensuring us their boating services. It's worth noting that the game can get pretty vague on where to go from here on out, very much like older JRPGs of this kind. For the most part, as long as you use context clues and logic, you can figure it out, but the game will often just not outright tell you where you need to go. In this case, since we've exhausted both our options for recruitment in Rathfleet and Lord Lake, we return to Rainwall to report our failure. On the way, we pass by a big hole called Big Hole. We tell Salam of how our journey went, and he seems fairly unperturbed by it. Much more important to him is the flag that he's having designed for us by the artist of Hod. We let him handle it. After a short discussion, he asks us if we want to fuck his daughter, which is weird, so we head to bed, but not before we stop by Urim's room to see he's painted a picture of our 10-year-old sister, and these people are weird. Later that night, we converse with George and Sileeds, with Sileeds becoming very frustrated with Salam and his orders. George figures that he just wants us and Sileeds to be figureheads, which is something Sileeds expresses she's tired of being. Eventually, Lucerina enters the room and asks us if her father has asked us anything strange. Turns out he also asked her to fuck us, so yeah, Salam is kinda keen on that idea. The party surmises that obviously this is all just a power grab to Salam and a way for him to appear like a hero at the end of it. Lucerina won't have it and has come to warn us of his conniving ways. Unfortunately, we don't really have any other choice than to go along with his plans, as the Godwins are too powerful to take on our own. George laments that we really need someone on our side to help plan our actions, a tactician if you will. This prompts Sileeds to remember she knows of a brilliant tactician that could aid us in just this way. A Lady Mercedes was once in service to Queen Arshtat during the Armés invasion years ago, and it was largely thanks to her that Farid and Raja were able to repel them. Unfortunately, this strategist is currently locked away in Agate Prison, put there after questioning Arshtat during one of her moments of being controlled by the Sun Rune. While this woman could be of great help to us, there isn't much we can do with her being locked up. As the party discusses this, it appears as if Sileeds becomes distracted. Suddenly saying she's tired, she gets up and leaves the room. The next morning, Leon informs us that Sileeds is still sleeping and George has gone out somewhere. We're left with just us and Leon to figure out what to do. And what do? Make a prison break, of course! We talk to Lucerina and ask her if she knows where Agate Prison is located. She says it's on an islet in the Phaedos and is only accessible by boat. Good thing we knows a guy that knows about boats, huh? Talking to her again shows us that we can change our party by speaking with her. In this case, we take along Cornelio and his 2 elves. We also see that there's 4 spots that are under Entourage. These are extra slots that we can put characters. They won't enter battle with us, but we can keep them there in reserve or to use any support abilities they might have. Again, the game never tells you directly, but we can figure out that we have to make a dash for Log and Lun and Rathfleet so they can take us to this Agate Prison and see if we can help this famed tactician. The 2 are surprised when we ask them to take us to a prison, but Log quickly assumes that we're going to break someone out, which, you're right, Log, but I think that says a lot about you. Log seems way too excited to help us and we set off. As we arrive at the enormous prison, the party sees that the Godwins already have the place staffed and guarded tightly. There's no way we can get in from the front, so Log tells us he might know of another way in. As soon as we arrive at the entrance to the mine, we find 2 chests, one containing a resurrection piece and the other a turtle orb, a rune that blocks status effects when it's equipped. Oh, and a beaver. A really cool beaver, who's racist. We enter the mine shaft and push a minecart to clear our way. The enemies here are, for the most part, souped-up versions of those we fought in the underground complex back in Stormfist. You know, the slugs that poison you and birds. The birds? They aren't too difficult, though we do have to actually watch our health and heal up when people get low. Log and Lun are useful enough here, but are well below those we've been using in our party up to this point. This is mostly because they enter our party at a lower level than everyone else, and we can't upgrade their weapons yet. Still, the 2 do have a useful co-op attack that deals damage to every enemy in a row. It's worth noting that Log becomes stunned after using it, however, which means he is unable to act in the next round. This part of the mine is pretty linear, though we can go out of our way to find a martial arts garb, a decent armor piece for either us or Leon. On the way, we can find a chest containing a sound set. Much like Windows sets, this lets us change certain assets of the game, in this case, the sound effects. We can't use it until we find a phonologist, however. Finally, we find a Mother Earth piece before moving on to the next area in the mine. Leon and Lun are startled to find people living down here, but Log explains he's had a lot of dealings with the cave dwarves living in this mine. I guess you could say Log knows people in low places. There's one particular dwarf that Log is trying to see, so we go off to explore the camp to find him. The camp is small, but actually has most of the vendors in any other town, though we can't use the blacksmith right now. We spend most of our potch on snazzy new armor before going off to find a skull cap, a helmet that we steal right in front of this poor man. Most of the dwarves here are surprisingly friendly, but don't have anything terribly interesting to say, so we hit up a ladder.
Hey! Gunny! Are you here?
Don't call me Gunny.
This is Cunny, Gundy. He's an old friend of Log's and an expert miner. At first, he doesn't believe Lun is Log's daughter, but Lun gets rid of that doubt. Before Log can even really explain what we're doing, Gundy is eager to break into the prison. Apparently, that was how the two met. They were fugitive smugglers. Log explains that the two of them would break into prison, usually helping to free gladiators. They were able to break into Agate Prison once, and the secret tunnel they built should still be there. With Gundy in tow, we enter the second part of Baskin Mine, also known as Hell, like literal actual hell. Alright, it's not that bad, but this is by far the biggest dungeon area so far. But there's only one way to go. Oh, there are tons of diverging paths, but all of them are dead ends. Nothing awaits us there, no treasure chests, just more random encounters. It wouldn't be so frustrating if this was the only time we needed to come here, but that's a secret. Also, the place we actually do have to go also looks like a dead end. First time I played this, I saw this wall, thought it was another fucking dead end, and ran all the way back through multiple times. Luckily, I know where to go now, so Cunny digs us a hole. We arrive in the basement of Agate Prison, where Gundy says his farewells. This trip through Agate Prison is a fairly short one, with the enemies being the same as those in the mine, as well as a few Godwin soldiers. As we move through the offices here, we pick up a military uniform, a decent piece of light body armor, and a guard ring, a defensive accessory. We continue through the prison until we come across a heavily guarded door.
Damn it! How did intruders get in here?
Yikes! Look at all of them!
We must protect Lady Mercedes at any cost.
You got it.
Huh? You will not pass!
Like other boss battles so far where we just fight a bunch of schmucks, this one isn't too difficult. The two soldiers in the back go down with any bit of AoE, though the two ones that are, well, obviously more important, have a good deal more health. Log goes down here, but he'll be fine. Interestingly enough, right after we beat his ass, one of the prison guards calls us Godwin scum and accuses us of coming to slay Lady Mercedes. The female guard in particular seems very protective of this person they're supposedly imprisoning. We explain who we are and why we're here. The guard with an alarmingly flat face believes us and tells us his name is Yeezus. The woman's name is Lele, and the other two are guards A and B, I guess. He explains that, though they are her guards, they never agreed with Lady Mercedes' imprisonment. Furthermore, the two have formed a relationship with her and have become more her protectors than her guards at this point. He also illuminates more on Mercedes' imprisonment. Turns out that Lord Godwin actually ordered the execution of the tactician, but Queen Arstadt was able to simply have her imprisoned. Lele is still skeptical of our claims and refuses to let us see her lady. But Leon offers her sword to the guard and tells her to strike her down should they do anything suspicious. This seems to connect with Lele, as Leon says it's not just her job to guard us, but also our intentions.
Lady Mercedes, may we please come in?
Enter.
We've brought His Royal Highness, the Prince.
Thank you, Lele.
Anything for you, my lady.
You're Lady Mercedes?
That is correct.
Lucretia Versos. Your Royal Highness, Leon, people of Raffleet, I have been waiting for you.
Waiting for us? How did you know we were coming?
Well, I didn't really know, but I was waiting for you all the same. I am a prisoner here. However, thanks to Zeus and Lele, I have some understanding of the situation outside. That is why I thought somebody would be coming for me soon. I was not sure whether it was someone who wanted to use my expertise or someone who wished to slay me. But now I see the prince himself came to rescue me. I am quite honored and humbled, just like a princess in a fairy tale. I welcome you. Please, will you not sit down and make yourselves comfortable?
Lucretia accepts our proposition before we can even make it. She's already deduced that we would need a tactician to help us navigate the political waters. The one caveat she has is actually one for us. She tells us that she was the one who advised our mother to don the Sun Rune. During the Lord Lake Rebellion, Lucretia learned that Lord Godwin intended to use the chaos of the situation to steal the Sun Rune. Putting things together, it now makes a lot more sense why Arstadt not only took on the rune, but also used it in such an extreme manner. Her punishment of Lord Lake was almost certainly a consequence of her donning the rune without yet knowing of its influence. Still, it could very well be that the only way to ensure the safety of the rune was to take it on. It's a pretty nuanced situation. Lucretia also laments the effect it had on Cyalides, who she feels blames her for Arstadt's mental decline. Finally, Lucretia reveals that she was actually Lord Godwin's advisor when all this went down, not the Queen's as we were led to believe, which is why he wanted her execution. She warns us that this shows that if she feels we are headed down the wrong path, she'll follow her own morality rather than loyalty to us. Doesn't really matter what choice we say here, really, but she seems pretty smart and we need all the help we can get, so we decide to take her along. She also asks us to accept Zeus and Lele into our following as well, so they come along too. With that, we move to escape the prison, though the rest of the guards are not as friendly with Lucretia as these two. Speaking of Lucretia, she can't be used in normal battles. She's one of my favorite characters in this game, but her only utility for the game part is in army battles where she provides a decent ability to our squad. Zeus and Lele, however, can be used in battle. First we'll cover Zeus, and well, he's not the greatest. Pretty much all his stats other than health and attack are low, and even then they're pretty middling. He's terrible at magic, has low accuracy. I guess he's kind of meant to be a tank. He can wear heavy armor, which is nice, but we're honestly better off using the Prince or Leon, who have the technique to parry fairly consistently. Zeus doesn't. Lele fares a little better, though not really because of her stats. She has much better magic, but not enough to compensate for being short-ranged. She does have access to a special skill, however, called Analyze. As you can probably tell, when we're in battle with Lele, we can see enemy health bars. This is really convenient. Not worth using a subpar character in my opinion, but it can certainly help make decisions. Zeus and Lele have a co-op attack called Lockdown, which deals a fair amount of damage to one enemy. It's not really worth it, but if you like guards, go ahead and use these two, I guess. We decide to make our escape by going through the front door this time, with Lucretia noting that Raffleet could very well be in danger. She says we don't have time to elaborate on that premonition, however, and urges us to make haste. Zeus and Lele trick the guards at the dock by telling them an intruder was spotted in the prison and they have to move the prisoners by boat. The two guards are pretty dumb, so they run inside, making the coast clear for us to come and steal a ship. On our way back, the party spots a fleet of warships. Lucretia tells us that this is likely the fleet of Barum Luger and assumes they're heading to Rathfleet. Log and Lun rightly freak out, but Lucretia maintains a calm demeanor and says she can handle it. After a long traveling cutscene, we finally make our way back to the river town. When we arrive, we're stopped by a couple of sailors who believe we're Godwins, since we are riding a Godwin boat after all. We explain who we are and Lucretia urges us to meet with Raja. We head to the Dahaka to find that Sileeds and George have already arrived. Lucretia introduces herself to George and Kisara since she's already acquainted with Sileeds and Raja. George says he was planning on breaking the tactician out himself but couldn't find a way in. He thinks it's funny we were able to do so. Really funny. Raja and Kisara start explaining the situation, telling us that Barum's fleet arrived and demanded their allegiance to Queen Limslea or they would be subjugated by force. Raja also mentions that Barum Luger was actually her student when she was head of the Falanan Navy. She knows he's very capable and that Rathfleet doesn't stand a chance against the Godwin forces. Still, she refuses to bend the knee but doesn't have a plan on how to defeat them. Lucretia says she does, but there's a snag, and that snag is us. Lucretia is our tactician, so we have to give the order to help out in this case. Choosing to think about it just delays the story. We gotta be a good boy and help out. Lucretia's first plan of action for us is to close sluice gates that are controlled by the Barrows. Sileeds says that they can probably ask Lucerina to do so. And with that, it's off to war. Yep, it's another army battle, but as you can probably tell, our unit names have changed. That's because I lied. This isn't an army battle, it's a naval battle. Naval battles are army battles. They just take place on the water. The primary differences are the units and abilities we have access to. There's still a rock, paper, scissors element, but this time we have combat ships, which beat ramming ships, which beat archer ships, which beat combat ships. We also have the Dahaka in this fight, which functions the same as an archer ship, but much more powerful. Again, we really don't have enough characters yet to make any meaningful decisions in this setup phase. We can really just pick to take Cornelio with us or not. And he's actually pretty useful, giving an ability that improves the speed of the ship he's on. We see that Barum laments having to go against Raja, but feels that Godwin's way of unifying Falena is required. We also see that the Barrows have sent reinforcements, with Boz and some of his men showing up eager for battle. Lucretia tells them to hold his forces back at first, however. Barum begins to notice the river's water level going down as the sluice gates were closed off by Lucerina. He tells his men to continue forward regardless. At the start of this fight, we want to listen to Lucretia's advice and just not move. Let them come to us, because when they do, some of their ships begin to run aground. Now, this isn't because Barum was stupid so much as he was ignorant. His ships didn't hit the riverbed, but the wreckage of a dam that Lord Barrows tried to build in the area. This dam was torn apart in the Lord Lake Revolt as their forces moved north to the East Palace. Our smaller ships can still maneuver through this wreckage, but 3 of Barum's battleships are effectively neutralized. Our goal here is not to actually destroy every ship, as once Barum's 2 remaining ships are sunk or his own ship takes enough damage, he will retreat. Still, you get more rewards for sinking the other 2 ships, so it's better to do that. Well, I tried to do that anyway. Somehow, I got Log and Lun's ship stuck on the sandbar with Barum going after them. Every time they'd retreat, they just go right back into Barum's attack range. Thankfully, they have the ability to heal themselves so they didn't sink, but I did miss out on the extra items. It's not too big a deal though, and with that, we successfully fend off the Godwin forces. We reconvene on the Dahaka, now joined once more with Rathfleet as a whole. Raja and Kisara thank us and Lucretia for our aid. Acknowledging that without our help they would surely have been dominated by the Godwins, they inform us that Rathfleet is now ready to devote itself wholly to being our ally. We recruit Raja and Kisara, and even though the game doesn't say it here, Lun and Log become full-fledged party members as well. That's not all, however, as there's one more character we can recruit in Rathfleet at this time. We head to the item shop and find a merchant who thanks us for fighting off the Godwins. He says the Godwins would be stifling to trade, and, well, trade is what he does. He tells us his name is Shinro and joins us. Yep, that's all we needed to do. If only they could all be so easy. As we leave Raftfleet, we cut to a scene with Gazelle and his father. The two are talking about Lucretia joining us. Gazelle seems worried about it, but Marscale tells him that Lucretia isn't to be trusted and will end up betraying us eventually. They're interrupted by a general called Dilbert Novum. The three discuss Barham's failure, with Marscal and Dilber chalking it up to Barham's attachment to Raja. Dilber has no such attachment, however, and is being sent to Rainwall directly to take us down. Back in Rainwall, Solemn has already heard of our victory and congratulates us. He gives some overly enthusiastic praise for Lucretia and laments about her imprisonment. Lucretia reminds him that it was our orders that saved Raftfleet and that all are here to support our cause. He agrees? It's a very laughter-filled conversation. Back in our room, the party remarks how obviously disingenuous Salem is. Lucretia says that's just how politics go, but does bring up a matter she's been perturbed by. In the Lord Lake Uprising, the rebels had to go through Barrow's territory to get to their Dawn Rune. The story is that their soldiers were overwhelmed, but Lucretia suspects there might be more to it. Finding out the truth of the matter becomes our next goal, but it would be difficult for the party to find anything without Salem catching wind of it. Lucretia suggests we employ the help of a private detective, one by the name of Oboro in particular. Oboro's detective agency actually operates out of a boat, so it's possible he's docked in Rainwall. Kisar is familiar with the detective and offers to have Log and Lund negotiate. Lucretia insists that Oboro is a very important potential ally and suggests we go to see him personally. We set off to find Oboro and we see a scene of Sileeds and Lucretia speaking together. Sileeds asks if the tactician is only helping us to make amends for what she did to Arstadt. Lucretia still feels she offered the best course of action with the Sun Rune, and insists that she is only helping us because it's the right thing to do. Sileeds admits that she still hates Lucretia, but feels better with her at our side. Before we continue, let's go over our new friends. First is Raja, who's only available to use in naval battles. There, however, she commands the Dahaka, the most powerful ship for the majority of the game. Like Lucretia, most of her contributions are through the story and not the gameplay. Shinro is our first support character. He cannot be used in battle, but if we bring him along, he lets us use an item shop wherever we want. Useful for keeping our inventory clear by selling stuff we don't need. In major battles, he gives us an extra ability usage to whatever unit he's attached to. Finally, the Raftfleet family. Log is all about brute force. He's not going to hit often or quickly, but when he does hit, he'll hit hard. He can also take a beating, though this is mostly due to his high health rather than defenses. His medium range makes him a little better at dealing damage than tanking it, since he doesn't have the best accuracy already, and lowering it further by putting him on the front line can make him just a meatball. Still, he's simple but effective. Kisara has big boobs. There, I said it. It's out. It's out there, I can't ignore it, okay? She is well endowed. Kisara can be described as Cornelio, but better. Unfortunately, the niche that Cornelio and her hold isn't terribly useful. She's a short-range mage, though with better health and attack than our well-endowed conductor. She attacks with a rope that can hit surprisingly hard for a mage, but not hard enough to really compensate for being short-range. Still, she is a decent mage early on, and with an Essence incantation can be a decent healer if you're going for a short-range heavy party for some reason. Lun is like a mix between Log and Kisara, appropriate since she's their daughter. She can best be compared to the Prince and Leon, as she's very versatile with an even mix of stats and a medium-ranged weapon. Of the three, I usually find more use for Lun since she can fit on pretty much any party, though is certainly less effective than us or Leon. Her signature skill, Pierce, lets her normal attacks sometimes hit a column of enemies. I'd rather have the option to use another skill, but it's decent enough. If you have all three party members in your party, you can get access to the Family Attack Co-op skill. This does a decent amount of damage to every enemy, but stuns Log for a turn. We head to the docks to see if our detective is docked there, and what a coincidence he is! Or at least these people are. A man and a woman sit at a table. The woman asks if we're a client, and the man is, well, a jerk. who smokes. This cool hombre is apparently Shigure, according to another woman who enters to chastise him. This woman recognizes us in Leon, though no one will let Leon correct her about Leon being an apprentice rather than a fully fledged Queen's Knight. We learn that the woman sitting down is called Sagiri, while the only person who seems to want to help us here is named Fuyo. Fuyo is the administrator and accountant for the detective agency, while Sagiri and Shiguri are investigators. Fuyo is more interested in talking at us than to us at the moment, so we learn that she was actually a client of Oboro before working with him. Finally, Sagiri tells us that Oboro is an inn at the moment and that we should return later to ask for his services. Also, Shiguri hits on Leon because nyeh. So, what must we do to have the enigmatic detective return? We must leave Rainwall and go back in. Then go back to his boat and he's there now. This is Oboro, detective and creator of the business card, apparently. We explain that we want him to investigate the Lord Lake uprising, specifically Salambero's doings during it. Surprisingly, he readily accepts, with even Fuyo proclaiming doubt that they can figure out anything on such an old event. Oboro is confident, however, and the case is on. We hid outside his office, where Oboro wakes up his two investigators. He tells us that he'll have a report ready for us as soon as possible. As we leave, Leon becomes distracted by something but brushes it off. This is actually the start of an optional side quest. We don't have to complete it, but it does help a lot with recruiting certain characters later on. Instead of returning to the mansion, we swing by the local inn. There we talk to a drunk who makes fun of our clothes. We then leave the inn to be stopped by Sagiri and Shigure. Shigure is mad at us for messing with his investigation. Sagiri is actually reasonable and explains that the drunk's name is Norden, and he was the Barrow's vice captain at the time of the uprising. Norden starts to come out, prompting us and the investigators to hide. The drunk stumbles out, but the interesting part is a shady character follows him and gives the obvious ellipses to signify his shadiness. The two investigators say they should follow, which gives us the choice on going with them. There will be a couple of these choices where we can follow up on the investigation or not, and selecting to not a single time will end the side quest, so we just have to keep being curious. We head back to the docks where we eavesdrop on Norden and the shady character. The man of shade questions Norden on why he was talking to us, the prince. Norden is still quite inebriated and still doesn't really believe that we were the prince. The man tells Norden to cut back as the drink is loosening his lips a little too much, even going so far as to threaten his life. Shigure says we need to follow the man, but Oboro stops us and says that won't be necessary. He explains that he already has a way of finding out where he went. That way is apparently a mouse? Oboro talks, to the mouse, which then runs off. We chase after it. The mouse leads us to a garden near the Barrow's mansion. Oboro explains that the mouse is one of his best investigators, which actually doesn't explain anything, but whatever, the man can talk to mice, I guess. The group heads back to Oboro's office, now knowing for certain that someone connected to the Barrows is threatening Norden into silence over something. Oboro asks us once more if we wish to continue the investigation with him, to which we say yes. Oboro says that we should put on disguises so as to not be noticed by any Barrows men. Perfect. So by dressing in the exact same way we were dressed when we first came to Rainwall, we cannot possibly be recognized and go talk to Norden once more. This choice here is actually one that will end the side quest if we ask him how the booze tastes. Yeah, there's a couple of those choices in this game. Oboro asks Norden about Lord Lake outright, which the drunk initially refuses to talk about. Oboro mentions he knows the Barrows are keeping an eye on him, and that makes Norden more compliant, and he agrees to come to the office. He still refuses to tell us anything, however, even if we were to torture him. Oboro states that they do not torture anyone to get their information, but tells Shigure to get the boat ready for departure. We have to say that we're taking him there to continue, even though we don't know what there is, and the game doesn't tell you. The hint here is that Oboro tells you that seeing is believing, and also that we then warp to the pier log took us to get to Lord Lake. So yeah, we go to Lord Lake. Norden is obviously distraught at seeing the devastation of Lord Lake and yells that we can't blame him for this. Oboro and company really push the idea of guilt onto Norden, telling him they know that's why he drank so much. They say the only way for Norden to clear his conscience is to tell them all about the situation. Norden says he needs time to think, so we head back to the pier. There, we're stopped by some Barrows soldiers before we can leave. The soldiers say they saw us snooping around the mansion and have come to demand we stop our investigation or else. Like every other time we've been threatened, violence is the answer, so we get in a fight. Like other mob fights like this, the Barrows soldiers are pretty easy. You can actually use Shigure and Shigiri here, who are pretty overleveled, making it even easier. I choose not to, but if you have any AoE spell at all, you can mop these guys up pretty quick. After knocking the soldiers out, the party returns to Rainwall in Oboro's office. At this point, Norden has sobered up and expresses remorse for getting us mixed up in his troubles. He seems much more open to talking now, but says he still needs some time to gather his thoughts. Oboro says we can return to our duties and he will deliver Norden's testimony when he's ready. And with that, we've completed this case. Investigation complete. Case closed. I don't know how to end this episode, but I have to end it here because... Oboro drops us off at Rathfleet, which is good because there's a couple of characters in the area we can meet. First is good old Officer Barney. He's here once again to tend to the wounded that we wounded. We asked him to join us, which he once again graciously declined. Also, do you remember the old man next to the trading post here? Well, I haven't shown it, but we've been stockpiling salt thus far in the game. We go to the trading post and ask to check rumors, and we find out that the price of salt has skyrocketed. We sell all our salt for a high price and talk to the old man, who asks us to do something about the high price of salt. You know, we were supposed to talk to him before we sold the salt, so give me a minute. So do you remember the old man next to the trading post here? Well, we check in on him, our old friend, and he tells us that the price of salt has skyrocketed. He wonders what we would do to fix the situation. Being the genius entrepreneurs we are, we just happen to have a lot of salt on hand and sell it for a nice profit. Talking to Cyro once more, he commends our intuition in lowering the price of salt by making it so there's more salt. All this talk of selling and salt starts to make him feel randy, and if there's one way to get someone on your side, it's making them randy. He joins us. Our next stop is, unfortunately, Basca Mines. We head to the pier, talk to an assistant, who lets us speak with Log, and we set off for the secret entrance. Our destination is a random spot in the second section of the mine past the dwarf camp. Why you would go here without knowing the character was there before is beyond me, but just wait until we get there, it gets even more arbitrary. One thing of note here is talking to the blacksmith at the dwarf camp reveals he's the same dwarf that was kicked out of Stormfist back during the Sacred Games. He says he'd like to forge our weapons, but he doesn't have a good enough hammer to work with right now. Anyway, we hit through the second section of the mine, you know, the long one with a lot of dead ends, until we come across the man, the legend, Egbert. And then we get into another random encounter because fuck me, I guess. Okay, so get this. We talk to Egbert, who greets us and says he's down here just because he likes being underground now. I suppose since we met him underground, that's how we were supposed to know he was here? I don't know. But anyway, as Egbert likes to do, he starts ranting about the Godwins. But this is no ordinary rant. This is a very slow rant. We have to watch this text scroll for like 2 minutes. But the kicker here is, and I can't believe they did this, but if you press anything other than the X button when the little icon that says a dialog box is done is on screen, you don't befriend Egbert. Press the X button before he's done speaking one time and he's gone. You missed him. Sorry, fuckhole. There's no indication here that this is what you're supposed to do. Anyone's instinct would be to press buttons to get this absurdly slow text scroll to speed up. That's the actual speed, by the way. I'm not slowing it down. And if you do, well, little Billy, I hope you saved before coming here if you want Egbert to be your friend. After he starts yelling nonsense, he'll seem to calm down and start talking normally, which you might think means you're safe. But no. Press a button, miss a character. It's not until his face changes and the text speed goes back to normal that we've passed and we can ask him to join us, which I'm tempted to not do out of spite, but he's useful and we need him, so We go to put him in our entourage and... oh, shit. So, we need to go to Agate Prison next. But when we did the Oboro side quest, all those characters we were working with had to join our party. Which means we had to take people out of our party to make room. Including Sias, who we need to get the next character. We have to go all the way back through the mines again, back through Rathfleet, and return to Rainwall to get him. Then come back here. I do not want to do that. But do it we must, and do it we do'd. Unfortunately, as soon as we enter the mansion, we are interrupted by Lucerina and the main plot. Lucerina informs us that a member of the Queen's Knights has escaped the capital and arrived here. Oh hell yeah, it's Kyle. Kyle tells us about the situation at the palace, with Lim and Miyake's being closely guarded and confined to the princess's room. He also informs us about the Sun Rune and how the Godwins have not yet found a way to wield it. Curiously, this sends Salem Barrows into a fit of glee, and he says he must inform Boz and Dean immediately. After Salem leaves, Kyle apologizes to us, as he feels he failed in his duties when he told us that he would rescue and take care of our family. The group doesn't blame him, of course, and the reunion ends with Kyle joining us for good. To continue the story, we need to rest in our rooms, but first we'll pick up Sias and head all the way back to Agate Prison. After many random encounters, we arrive at the prison to get into another random encounter. As we pass by a cell, Sias stops us and tells us that there's a prisoner here and goes to free them. Thankfully, Sias did not just unleash a murderer upon us, but a map maker. The man introduces himself as Takamu, and he's well pleased to see us. He tells us he actually worked for our father, who wanted detailed maps to be made of Falena and distributed to the people. When the Godwins took over, they told him maps were only to be used for military use. Takamu refused and ended up here as a result. We could use some maps, so we ask him to come with us. He readily accepts, but says that the Godwins confiscated his equipment and would need them before escaping. When we set off to find the equipment, Sias stops us at another cell. He says the prisoner here was found in the sealed room during the Godwin attack and attempted to make off with the Sun Rune. He says the prisoner's name is Killy before being interrupted by, well, Killy. Killy lets himself out to the surprise of Sias, saying he was simply inspecting the bust the Sun Rune rests on. We also get to see he's got a pretty neat hat. He asks us if we know about the bust, to which we reply that it's just an old family heirloom. He doesn't find that answer satisfactory and leaves. Takamu's stuff is actually the other way, down in the basement near the hole we entered from. We find his map-making tools and he formally joins us. Skipping ahead, because it's just yet another long, painful trek through the mine, our next stop is actually Hod. Here, we're once again going to speak to the flashy woman. Oh. But this time we bring Siledes, who she likes a lot more than us. She asks our aunt who made her dress, and Siledes says she actually did it herself. The woman becomes infatuated with Siledes, calling her a fashion diva and introducing herself as Josephine. She informs us that she's going with us, and yeah, we recruit her. Off to war, I guess. Before we move on, let's learn a bit about our new friends. Sairo is the grandfather of Shinro and acts much in the same way. The only difference between the two is Sairo gives us access to a trading post instead of an item shop. Overall, the differences between the two are pretty negligible, but Sairo is a much bigger pain in the ass to recruit. Speaking of being a pain in the ass to recruit, next is Egbert. Thankfully, he's pretty worth the ridiculous way we recruit him though. largely because of his support ability, Potchfinder. Egbert is a support and major battle only character, though this ability is by far his biggest contribution. It acts much like the prosperity ring we found earlier, giving us extra potch whenever we win a battle. If we can make room for him, Egbert is coming with us, so I don't have to farm as much potch. Takamo is another support character and another very useful one. He's also very useful in major battles, increasing the movement speed of any unit he's attached to. The first of Takamo's support abilities is his most important, but is very specific in its use. You see, he makes maps, which means he's good at reading terrain, I guess. This means he has the ability to find hidden paths and gives us access to areas we wouldn't normally have access to. This is mostly used in certain side quests and to recruit other characters. His second ability is far more general in use, and that's Escape Route. Like in most RPGs, you can run from battles in Suikoden V, but you have a chance of failing. Not so if Takamo is in your entourage. This will be very useful to me, at least, when I have to run through a bunch of areas later in the game that'll take a long time to auto-battle through. Finally, we have Josephine, who can actually be used in battle. Josephine is very similar to the first character we plucked from Hod, Cornelio. She's a short-range, magic-focused character. She doesn't have the elves, but she does have better stats than Cornelio in basically every department. They're still not great, but she can take and deal hits a bit better than the conductor. She comes equipped with a unique rune called the Red Rose rune, which kind of works against her mage-like qualities. This allows her to deal 2 times her attack damage to one enemy, which is really good. For reference, most single-target co-op attacks do 1.2 times damage. The downside of this is it causes all her allies to become inflicted with the anger status effect. The best way to use this is for her to be your only mage and fill her party with hard-hitting auto-attackers. Keep in mind, though, that she'll have a more limited rune selection since the Red Rose rune gives no other benefits and cannot be removed. Oh hey look, while we were talking about characters, we made it all the way back to the mansion and are going to sleep. It's not a long rest, however, as Salim Barrow shows up at our door seeking a private audience. He starts by explaining he's received reports of a large Godwin force moving towards Rainwall, led by General Dilber Novel. The topic quickly shifts to what would happen after the battle is won, however, as Salim boldly asks us if we wish to become king. He specifies that he isn't talking about usurping the Falanan crown, but instead creating a new kingdom out of Barrow's territory. He would have us do this not just with our reputation, but also with the help of Armee's aristocrats that he's been in contact with. Needless to say, this is Salim playing his hand, and it's a pretty dirty one. Keep in mind that Salim wants us to marry his daughter, and it's pretty obvious that this is a power play on his behalf, not ours. Being in contact with Armes is also a huge red flag considering the actually pretty recent history Falana has had with them. Furthermore, he's only felt safe telling us this after learning that the Godwins couldn't blast him into nothing with the Sun Rune. But, at the same time... Oh, Leon! No, we were just talking about, nothing. Okay, no, never mind. I'm gonna be a king, okay? Salim and I are gonna pimp this place out.
I have a report for you, Your Majesty. Under the pretext of supporting the East Kingdom, the Armis army has crossed the border and occupied Rainwall. Your Majesty's brother, the pretender to the throne, has apparently been murdered by Lord Barrow's men.
I see.
That damn fool. Why didn't he realize he was being used by Barrows?
Your Majesty, I believe now is the time for decisive action.
I realize that! The East Kingdom has no right to take over our lands. Rainwall and Estrais are within the domain of my queendom. I order these lands to be reclaimed no matter what, even if it means using the Sun Rune!
Yes, Your Majesty. Leave it to me. Send messages to Generals Luger and Novum. Prepare for an all-out attack. I'll be going into battle as well.
Yes, sir.
Oh, how did all this happen? You fool. You stupid, stupid fool.
Okay, that doesn't happen. We'll have to be king some other time, I guess. Yep, there are bad ends in this game, and that was certainly one of them. Hope you saved! Here's what actually happens. We reject Salem's offer of being king, of course, because, I mean, who would want that? Salem tells us that he's doing all this for our benefit and urges us to reconsider. He leaves, but not before saying we shouldn't let this conversation outside of this room, as there would be consequences. We awake the next morning and speak to Leone, who tells us she heard our conversation with Lord Barrows. She's proud of us for refusing, like, we did, and tells us everyone is downstairs getting ready for the upcoming battle. We go downstairs and speak to our friends. Kyle is mostly concerned with girls, one of which is Lucerina, who's like 16, you creep. Lucretia, however, has already surmised Salem's meeting with us and what we talked about, but says we can't talk about it here. So we head back up to our room to find George. We learn that he was sent on a scouting mission by Lucretia, and there he found soldiers that he easily identified as being from Armes. Those weren't the only people he found, though, as he also spotted one Urim Barrows with the soldiers. Lucerina has also joined us and explains her father has been in contact with Armes for some time, and she found notes stating he was going to make use of some of their soldiers. The party deduces that Salem's plan is for these soldiers, called the Southern Mountain Corps, to arrive just at the right moment to thwart General Novum's advance. This would no doubt collapse any support we'd have among many Felanans and certainly any sympathetic to Godwin ideals, as we'd be seen as siding with a foreign, hostile nation. This would all but force us to accept the idea of forming our own nation closely related to Armes in order to survive. Cyleades is furious at this and urges us to pack our bags immediately. Lucretia says we should wait, however, as leaving now would leave us in a much worse position with fewer allies. She says she has a plan, however it would require ruining the Barrows' reputation. Our choice here doesn't really matter, we go along with the plan regardless, but fuck Salem. Even Lucerina agrees that her father is way out of line and agrees to help. The scene fades to black here, so we don't actually get to know about the plan at this moment. So we go back downstairs.
Hey, how you doing? You the prince? Wilhelm's the name of the Lindworm Mercenary Brigade. We'll be helping you out. And this is my right-hand man, Mueller.
It's nice to meet... What are you looking at?
Hey, Prince, you lady killer. Look at you dragging along a cute little thing like her.
What?
Let me tell you something. I fought all around the world, but the babe factor here has got to top them all. Look at you. Kinda makes you extra motivated, huh, Mueller?
We need only the motivation to do our duty.
Look at you, married to your job.
Your Royal Highness! My, with the Lindworm Mercenary Brigade on our side, we're ready for anything! I think it might finally be time to give the order to go into battle, yes? What say you, Your Highness?
So yeah, another creep lust after Leone. The guy with Wilhelm Mueller you may remember from the Sacred Games. He's the guy who threatened to hang the pretty boy. Anyway, we do indeed go to war. We have a few more options now, but most of our squads are still locked. For this battle, I want to make sure I have as many uses of the charge and barrage abilities as I can, as they allow you to do damage to a unit without taking damage yourself. Cyleade's special ability, Cyclone, also does this. Dilber arrives and the battle starts, but Lucretia reminds us of the plan. She tells us to have all our units retreat into the forest to the south and not engage with the Godwin force at all. When we start to do this, the forces not in on the entry get confused with the Lindworm Brigade getting agitated, but nonetheless they listen. Dilber thinks we're scared and urges his forces to charge us down. It's important to not just go into the forest, but to continue heading west. If we don't, the Godwin force will catch up. When we catch sight of the hidden soldiers, Lucretia sends out a messenger. We see Urim fraternizing with the ambushers, recounting their plan of routing the Godwin forces and declaring their allegiance to Armes. The Armes general, Jadon, then receives word that both of the other forces on the field are currently heading for their position. The message Lucretia sent arrives and it was actually meant for the enemy general. The message says that we've discovered hidden Armes soldiers and would like to temporarily join forces to eliminate them. Jadon begins to interrogate Urim on what's going on, prompting Urim to make an excuse and hightail it out of there. With the soldiers not being able to follow because of the encroaching armies, he escapes. Boz and Dean are surprised to find Armee's soldiers, but immediately get ready to take them on. The Lindworm mercenaries aren't so gung-ho, however, as fighting Armees was not part of their contract. They leave the battlefield. Dilber agrees to the ceasefire, and now our targets are solely the Armee soldiers. Lucreza advises us to be conservative with our own troops and allow the Godwins to take the brunt of the assault. Much like the last major battle we fought, our goal here is to either destroy all the regular enemy units or reduce the enemy general's health to about half. Here we opt to take on the little guys. They're all cavalry, making archers our best bet. We do actually have full control over the Godwin forces in this fight, and we'll be using them where possible to make direct attacks so as to not risk our own units. Overall, this isn't a difficult battle once we position our army correctly. You can lose guys here as the enemy cavalry are pretty high level, but we end up fairly unscathed. Once we kill enough dudes, Jadon laments being humiliated and retreats. Lucreza orders Dean to follow the remaining Armee's forces, while Dilber commands his forces to return to the capital. Informing the Godwins about Armee's involvement here takes precedence over us. Yay, we won! We return to the Barrows mansion, where Salem congratulates us and feigns ignorance. We can't really pin anything on him, though, since we have no proof. That is, until Urim arrives, out of breath and irate. He demands revenge on Jadon and Dilber for humiliating him before, Yeah, you fucked up, boy. The two Barrows tried to play it off, but obviously everyone here is shocked at what Urim let slip out. Lucerina immediately acts, telling us to follow her. Kyle and the others keep the Barrows from fleeing while Lucerina leads us to the basement. On the way, we're stopped by Chuck, however, who's a bit naive and wishes to follow Salem's orders. He was told to not let anyone, even Lucerina or the prince, down into the basement. He seems reluctant, but says he'll even fight us to stop us. And so, fight we do.
Prince, there's no way I'm gonna lose, you know.
The duel with Chuck is a bit harder than our first one because a lot of his quotes are just, "I'm gonna hit you," and sometimes it's an attack and sometimes it's a special. We also get to see what happens when we tie, with both fighters taking damage. I really like all the animations they did for the duels. They're pretty fluid and there's a lot of variation between them. Also, our weapon is pretty cool. I'm just gonna let the rest of the duel play out. It got kind of close, but that was on purpose, just to show some more of the cool animations, okay?
No way! You haven't seen the last of my strength yet! I need a little break here. Not bad, Prince. Not bad at all. You thought that'd work? I'm really gonna pound you, so get ready. I need a little break here. Prince, you're really tough, man.
Thankfully, after losing, Chuck lets us pass without issue.
A wardrobe. Definitely looks suspicious.
Dawn Rune? Then I guess that means my father must have...
What greed and arrogance. Simply taking a rune without understanding its true power.
Who are you?
You, the one from the East Palace.
Huh?
I finally find it, only to see this child has taken possession of it. But remember this, the Dawn Rune has chosen you. You must try to be worthy of it. If you fail, then I will kill you. That will release the rune from you. I can then give it to someone more suitable.
Not if I can help it!
Who the hell are you anyway?
There's no need for you to know anything about me. Just concentrate on how to be worthy of the rune.
Hey, wait! Where did she go?
Just like the East Palace. What's with that lady anyway?